Hey, this is Alex. Today on the show, we had a lot of open source, just an incredible amount of open source, including a stunning 4 million tokens context window model from Hailuo AI. We also had a lot of audio advances. Those come at the end of the show. And the conversation with Graham Neubig from All Hands talk about OpenHands, which used to be OpenDevin. See his second time on the show. All this after the intro. Alrighty, welcome to ThursdAI, everyone. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with Weights and Biases. Today is January 16th, an exciting episode in front of us, full of open source. Today with my co-host here, Wolfram Ravenwolf, all the way from Cologne, Germany.
Near Cologne,
now we know where in Germany because there's an event coming up,
right.
And now I know the location, so you're doxing yourself a little bit.
It's still over an hour to drive.
So not necessarily from that. You want to tell the folks, how's your week, man?
Oh, it's been a great week. So I'm very excited about big releases, large context releases, voice stuff, all the things we are talking about soon. So yeah, it's been great. So much new stuff to play with.
A lot
not
of
enough
stuff.
time.
Barely catching
Never
up.
enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And another co-host that joined us fully well rested, although waking up with the sounds of Canadian Bill. Hey, welcome, Nistan.
Hey, everybody. Let's go.
Let's go. Nistan, you're joining us under your name. For folks who are not looking at us, there's a new thing called github.gg. Is that now an affiliation?
Yeah, we came up with a bunch of newer stuff that we haven't released yet, and the entire caching is pretty fixed too. And also, we're getting our first big contract just because of this side project. So yeah.
For those who haven't been following, the reasons why Nistan hasn't been showing up lately is because the side project grew to some proportions. GitHub.gg allows you to log in there and see GitHub repos in plain text and then talk to those and do multiple things. Nistan will give us some updates. It looks like now it preoccupies a lot of your time, so we'll get an update.
It's a problem, honestly, because we're reaching 300 to 1,500 users every hour jumping on it, and now actual friends and stuff use it too, so they'll complain directly when it's not working, and yeah, it's becoming a bit of a problem. It's a good problem.
A good problem to have when friends are joining the side projects and side projects become a little bit more. So if VCs are listening and want to support this,
we have big contracts, and we don't. It looks like we're not gonna really need them. Yeah, it's when a contract starts offering more than what a VC angel does, you're in a different spot.
This is not invited. All right, not invited. So, folks, we have tons of news to go through. I think we can dive into open source immediately, but we'll do it here. As always, for folks who are tuning in, we're running through everything that we have to talk about. Sometimes we get lost and we're just like, we already talked about this. For those who are short on time, ThursdAI usually takes around an hour and a half, 2 hours of good conversation after the intros and TLDRs. For those who don't have all that time, we want you to get the benefit. So if that's all the time you have, the TLDR is for you to grab the latest newsline super quick. So the motto on ThursdAI is we stay up to date. If you didn't follow any part of this and need to go in the middle, we understand. You can find us on any podcast platform like Apple Podcast and Spotify under the ThursdAI. The best way to support that is to leave us a 5-star review, which I think we have everywhere. Keep that going. That's great. Let's run through the TLDR. This is everything that we have to talk about on ThursdAI for January 16th. We're going to start with open source, a lot of open source. The biggest news from open source out of left field, Hailuo AI from a Chinese company, apparently a 200-person company, like a big company from China. I actually need to talk to them. They reached out, but it's midnight in Shanghai. Released an LLM, a mixture of experts LLM with 456 billion parameters with 4 million tokens in a context window. That's twice as much as the largest Gemini context window I don't know the requirements to run this behemoth, but it is in open weights. You can download it if you're able to run it. And they added Lightning Attention and a bunch of other features. We'll definitely talk about how a company that previously released a video model, MinMax, now releases an LLM all of a sudden with advances we haven't seen yet. This is significant. This feels like the biggest open source news discussion this week. Our friends from Gina, we've talked about Gina releasing embedding models and reader models. They released the reader version 2, a direct conversion from HTML to Markdown or JSON. That model is tiny and can run even on Edge. This little model is 3 billion parameters, converts HTML to very good Markdown and even directly to JSON, which previously required converting first to Markdown and then to JSON. And they compare themselves to big models like Gemini, and this is a 1.5 billion parameter model. You can run this in your very cool. Shout out to Genitos. If you guys are using that kind of stuff for anything, definitely Gina is what you need. Reader V2, we're going to briefly cover this. Intern LM, a bunch of Chinese folks this week came out with open source. Intern LM came back. You guys remember Intern LM for a while? They used to release incredible models. Intern LM Instruct came with Apache 2 license with state-of-the-art performance in the tiny package of 8 billion parameters. The highlight is that it is trained on a very significant small amount of tokens with high quality. This was a cool one. Wolfram, I think we're going to chat about this. Our friends with OpenBMB from Tsinghua University. So if I'm not pronouncing Tsinghua University correctly, please correct me. OpenBMB released Mini CPM-O. It's an omni model that's tiny and can understand video. It can get streamed video inside. It's bonkers, honestly. Remember how we were excited when we just got video from Gemini a month and a half ago, and then GPT-4o, we got the video presentation a long time ago. We're all waited. Now we have this in open source. From China. This is crazy. I played with this. It's an omni model that understands you can record yourself lifting through a page, listening through a page, or reading, and it says you're probably reading because I hear you like scrolling through pages. Like it's a full-on omni model in a tiny package, and you can live stream your video into it. Yeah, we'll definitely chat about this and maybe do a quick example as well. Another interesting one is this Dria agent one. I don't know if you guys saw this one. Dria fine-tuned Qwen on outputting Python code functions. So instead of using function codes as JSON, as every other model in tool use, they use JSON and you provide your functions in JSON structure, they use Python function calls. And because of that, they're able to understand how your one function will call another function, and then one-shot complex agent reasoning, and they claim that this beats some other models by a little bit. So an interesting fine-tune of Qwen. And another reasoning model, Sky T1, that was trained for less than $450. I saw this and I went, And also the one thing that I noticed that they open sourced everything, including data code, model weights, and also 1B link. So I like that. Those are the open source releases, there's quite a lot of them. So I ran through them super quick. I'm assuming there's more. Question for the audience as well. Feel free to drop if there's anything else that I missed. But opening up to my co-host here, let me know if I missed any big ones that we should talk about.
I think, which is a big deal, is Zenova's web release of Kokoro.js. You can just implement it in the browser. Last week, I implemented it that very night, right after the show. We had it running, not publicly, but internally, and it ran on CPU. It wasn't the most responsive, but it was still very usable just on CPU alone for the voice model. Now that you can have it on web GPU by default, because it's so tiny, right? It's only in float 16, Kokoro, the voice.
Yeah.
So Zenova's voice release for Transformers.js for Kokoro, because now all you need to do is npm install Kokoro.js, and now your site has text-to-speech, and you don't have to do any DevOps, which is pretty nuts. That's next level.
Yeah, so it's taking us over to the voice and audio open source category. If you remember last week, we talked about Kokoro, a super tiny high quality TTS, text to speech model. It brought back the Sky voice from OpenAI, which sounds kind of like Scarlett Johansson was the best voice in OpenAI. Now it's back. Zenova, a friend of the pod, has been working at Hugging Face for the past 2 years and ported it to NPM. So now Kokoro is also available in the NPM library and can run in transformers and just runs in your browser. 150 megabytes download, but still runs in your browser. NPM install transformers-js. So you guys should know about this. No DevOps. Also in the voice and audio open source category, OTTS 0.3 is 1 billion and 500 million. So significantly bigger than Kokoro and less high quality as well. Kokoro is incredible for its size, but another TTS that allows zero-shot voice cloning with like 10 seconds also came out, and I think with a very permissive license, and also multilingual with 20,000 hours of audio trained. Another TTS came out after Kokoro. This one allows you to do zero-shot voice training, voice cloning. In voice and audio, we're kind of moving away from open source. Hailuo, the folks who release a Minimax model, probably state-of-the-art open source or close to it. Definitely state-of-the-art in context length. 4 million context length, that's as far as we know state-of-the-art. They also released text-to-audio, an emotional model that generates audio, and it sounds incredible. We should definitely play some samples. Some voices over there sound very similar to Hollywood voices. And I'll play one example because I think those are very cool. Basically, an 11 Lab competitor from Hailuo also came out with the model. In big companies, LLMs, and APIs, we have OpenAI launching chat tasks. Our friends like Tibor Blaho and Testing Catalog always look behind the code and feature flags to see what is about to come in OpenAI. They knew this was almost launched during the 12 days of launches in AI during December. Chatty announced tasks. Now there's a new selection in the OpenAI interface, and one of them is GPT with tasks. You can ask it for a reminder, basically a scheduled task that will do it for you on a set timer. If it works, we'll chat about this. Also, we got a new Mistral release called CodeStrol 2501. I've never seen the vibes in the community split on the model quite as fast. Literally before they announced the release, I already saw folks posting evals and saying it's not as good as they claim it is. And I was like, they didn't even announce it yet. And yet I already saw people claiming that what they announced is not correct. So we'll cover this. A very interesting one, Sakana AI. Folks, we talked about Sakana multiple times. They had evolutionary algorithms. They were co-founded by one of the authors of the Transformers paper. We talked about Sakana multiple times. Came out with a paper called Transformer Squared, Self-Adaptive LLMs. And this paper is very interesting because they talk about models that change their weights on the fly for the task that they're working on. Very interesting. We talked about test time compute before. This is something different. A alternative transformer, potentially architecture with like 2 passes. Hopefully we'll have some time to talk about this. I think that's mostly it in the big companies' LLMs, unless I missed something big. Nothing from Google yet. Nothing from Anthropic. Where's Opus 3.5? Nowhere. Microsoft is quiet so far. That's it, yeah. Quiet on the big companies. OpenAI is supposed to give us 0.13 mini at the end of January. That looks like maybe next week. And maybe today there's going to be some breaking news. But for now, quiet. Folks in the audience, if you have any big companies news that I missed, please post it. Yeah. In this week's Buzz, where I talk about everything related to weights and biases, we have one out of distribution announcement. I went to San Francisco last week and also Seattle. And I did 2 workshops on evaluating LLM applications, as I told you last week. That was great. I met some of you. This week, I will tell you that we have another one in New York. I'm not going to be there, unfortunately. That's on January 22nd. Multiple folks have come to me and said, hey, Alex, I knew about this workshop from you on the show. If you're in New York, on January 22nd, we and Pinecone together are going to have an evaluating RAG applications workshop. The link is going to be in the show notes. It's a free sign up. And also, if you're in Germany, in Cologne, there's going to be an event with a co-host here. This event actually competes with ThursdAI on Spotlight. I'm just kidding.
I could stream from there.
Should. So AI Day in Cologne in Germany. Wolfram, you want to say a few words about this event?
This is the third time it's here. I don't know how many it was exactly. I was just a guest as well, and couple hundred, I think, not more. It's a developer event, so there are no recruiters, the practitioners amongst themselves talking about what they did and the problems they tackled. So it's always a bring your own problem, where everybody who signs up can also state what they would like to have solved, and that will be discussed with a panel of experts. Companies showing what they are doing, how they are doing it. It's always very interesting. The topics this time are how to optimize local LLM inference and computer use in production. So what Claude has done, and how to implement your own artifacts in rack solutions. Those are the big three, and I think there are about 3 hours, 1 hour per discussion, and then a lot of time for networking, hanging out, free pizza. I've always been there late after midnight, and then driving back late. It was a great event, and one of the coolest things was that I met some podcast listeners who said, "Oh, I have seen you on ThursdAI or heard you," because we were not doing video back then. So that's great, and I hope to see more there.
Let's go. Folks who are listening to ThursdAI, if you want to drive out to Cologne, if you're in Germany, and meet Wolfram, and then tell other folks about the podcast and build a little community within community. That's always fun.
An airport nearby. And it's actually a movie studio where we have the location, and there's a big airplane right in front of it.
That's awesome. Take pictures, show us.
Exactly 1 week after that, I'm going to be going outside too. So I'll be at AI Tinkers Toronto at the Google offices.
AI Tinkers in Toronto next week. 800 people signed up for that one.
On Thursday.
800 people signed up for that one. I have no idea how you guys are going to get that many people in there. All right, moving on with the news. Yeah, but so I really want to come out for this one, but that's crazy. Nistan, maybe I'll see you.
Maybe.
Are you demoing?
Yeah, it's a 6-minute AI Tinkers demo.
So folks, if you're listening to us and you're in Toronto and you haven't signed up yet, the wait list is long because I hear from Joe, it's full. It's going to be a live stream because like 800 people signed up for AI Tinkers in Toronto. Hopefully we'll do something in Toronto, like in an evaluations workshop, and then I'll come out. Last thing I wanted to say.
I'll be here though. I'll be here because it's at 5 p.m. Eastern, so I'll still be on ThursdAI.
Oh, you'll come in. Awesome. Let's go. And then evaluation course that we've talked about. If you haven't come to any of our workshops, evaluation course is going very strong, very good attendance. Folks are coming up. It's free. Super quick TLDR. We're going to end this with the TLDR. We'll start with open source. Vision and video. Luma released Ray 2 video model. It looks super cool. I don't know how much we need to update about every model that comes out. VO2 just basically takes the cake, but they did release the steak video. If you guys remember, we talked with our friend with the steak comparison videos. Their steak video looks good. We'll call this the steak eval. They're really good at the steak eval. Black Forest Lab released a fine-tuning API for Flux Pro. So far, you weren't able to fine-tune Flux Pro because of proprietary restrictions. Now you are able to. If you are into this, fine-tuning Flux Pro possible now, and then you can use that fine-tune for Flux Ultra. I think this is it in the TLDR space. We've talked for almost 30 minutes. Let's actually talk in depth about Hailuo. Let's open with open source AI. So absolutely, from the start, the biggest news in open source AI this week, I want to start with the main course, Minimax 01 from Hailuo, a Chinese company, apparently a very big Chinese company. I need to make sure they come to ThursdAI. Invited them. They said yes, and then they said it's a midnight in Shanghai and they can't come. So maybe next time. By the way, this is the dedication that we have from Quen folks. It's very late and they still come. Minimax 01 from Hailuo, a 4 million context, 456 billion mixture of experts LLM with 45 billion active parameters. Behemoth that matches on benchmarks with very big companies' LLMs. Very close in MMLU to GPT-4o, Claude Sonnet and Gemini Flash experimental, They added Quen 2.5, 70B to their comparisons. They added DeepSeek, Llama. If you add all of those, including Quen and DeepSeek V3, into your eval comparisons, you get a very good pass from us. Let's talk about the 4 million context window, folks. This is like, I think, the biggest. Where did this come from? A company that was previously releasing video models and is now giving us, what would we use this for even? I'm struggling to fill the 2 million context window in Gemini often. And how? These are the main two questions.
It's huge, yeah.
It's absolutely remarkable, right?
I had some
Absolutely
log file
remarkable.
analysis to do this week, so it was more context than OpenAI could handle. Their limit is 128K with the API, and on the web interface just 32K. I had to go to Sonnet because 200,000K context was the minimum I needed. With 4 million, it's hard to imagine, but you could give it a whole log and say, check for anomalies, check for why an error is happening and stuff like that. So that would be one use case where you need a lot of context if you don't want to filter yourself first. It's cheap. For that much context, I did the benchmarking runs with the model using their API, and it cost me a few cents.
Yep. The APIs, in addition to the fact that the model is open weights, we're going to get to the license as well. They also released an API that's very cheap. I thought that the API, at least what I saw on OpenRouter, that this model ended up on OpenRouter as well, that the API is 1 million tokens. I'm not sure. I want to see this, Wolfram. I don't know if you saw this as well. I want to show and talk about this. Maybe this is an OpenRouter fluke, and they just don't have support to show more. This could be, but I think they do show, like on Gemini, I think they do show 2 million. So let's take a look together, because I do want to show if that's correct, and I want to trust that OpenRouter does the thing correctly. But if you go to OpenRouter and you show for Minimax, you see that they support 1 million context in input plus output.
Yeah, OpenRouter is usually pretty accurate about that.
So Gemini, let's look at Gemini for example. Gemini Experimental 1206, they show 2.1 million context.
Yeah,
and output is 8K. So
we're trying to run it on the AMD boxes at the full 4 million to do the testing. I just did the testing on their own app, and it was fantastic. It got the margin questions right. The first few tries I did to it looks pretty good. It just
it's a good model.
One shot very hard questions. I was asking it about COBOL and other random things like data gen work. It was very good at that. The question about an orbital launcher in Mars, it did all the complicated step-by-step calculations perfectly on first try. So it passed the vibe check, and usually when it passes the vibe check, it means that the benchmarks are probably pretty accurate.
So vibe check, yes. Yeah. Novel lightning attention architecture, they say, offers exceptional performance and efficiency for long context understanding. Even 1 million context is, if you remember, outside of Gemini at 2 million, nobody offers that length of context besides Quen. Quen is the only one in Quen Pro that offers 1 million. Anthropic offers 500,000, I believe. Nobody else offers 500,000 besides Quen, and now these folks are offering this. I want to add the final comments. OpenRouter says 1 million output in the context window. And I'm not sure if this is correct, but they're saying the output is 1 million as well.
I found something on the API documentation of the minimaxi.com site. The max tokens for this model is 1 million, not 4 million.
For the API?
For the official API.
Okay, so we're confirmed. The model supports, and yeah, I read this in the documentation in the paper as well. They trained the model with 1 million during training, and they extended the context length with ROPE via decoder. I forgot the exact acronym for ROPE. Rotated embeddings, something they trained.
Rotary positional encoding. Said, isn't it funny that we had the authors of that paper before anyone even knew what it was? Like Enrico Cipolla from News that actually invented yet another ROPE extension, yet another rotation. That was over a year something.
And Mozilla. A long time ago on ThursdAI, I talked to these folks, and now everybody uses this to extend context, including Meta. These folks used the ROPE to take the 1 million they've trained. Imagine the data you need to train with 1 million context. They extended it to 4 million, but the API is supporting 1 million. So the model itself is 4 million. API supports up to 1. I'm assuming this is just hardware requirements on the API part.
It's also accuracy, because if you do yarn or dynamic yarn, you can actually lose accuracy under the multiplier. So at under 1 million, it can be less accurate, but then above 1 million, it will actually be a lot smarter of a model. So you have to go above the multiplier to actually get that effect. So it does make sense for them to only offer the API at 1 million, because you also get more accuracy. Yarn's kind of strange that way.
Absolute bonkers for the needle in a haystack as well. You guys visualize this like blue, a checker box, kind of like a GitHub submission metrics, right? Everything's green. They have a fully green percentage needle in a haystack, but they measure 4 million tokens. It's crazy. All of it is green. Not only that, if you guys remember, we talked about how needle in a haystack is not a perfect measurement of context. And then NVIDIA came up with the ruler benchmark, and the ruler shows effective context. It takes needle in a haystack to the next level, and they show in the needle in a haystack, they show in the ruler benchmark that Minimax all the way up to 1 million doesn't lose coherence in context that much. All the way up to 1 million, they get 91%. Gemini Pro, for example, gets 85%. Gemini Flash gets like 70% at 500K tokens. Significant performance all the way up to 1 million. That's according to what they claim, which is very impressive. They say first large-scale implementation of lightning attention mechanism. This is their own thing, not only a model, but also they released a new attention mechanism. But I don't see any details about the attention mechanism. It looks like the model was released and also deployed.
It might be from, like, I'm not too sure. I don't know if that's from Lightning AI, because Lightning AI as a company has been around for a while. And it's like one of the initial core contributors of PyTorch had started Lightning AI. So I was looking if it's related to that, but it doesn't seem to. We'll have to look that up.
Whether or not the lightning attention that they mentioned is Lightning AI related?
There's another paper called Lightning Attention. So maybe we'll do a paper reading on that.
I'll be a good idea. Wolfram, you mentioned this. API process is ridiculously cheap. For this context, 20 cents per million input tokens. So that's, you can maximize the whole window.
Yes, 20 cents per minute.
You can fully maximize the whole million context window and just send 1 million tokens, 20 cents. And if you do it with Gemini, I don't know how much it costs, because I think it's showing free still.
I can tell you on O1 preview, which you get on Open Router, a 50,000 token input and 4,000 token output cost me like $1.40 per pop.
Yep.
That's expensive.
Yes.
So yeah, that's going to be like that's going to be like $15 a pop if you were to do it at 1 million, which they don't offer, but it's, yeah. Also to note, Qwen 1 million, when Junyang announced it here, they haven't released the model, but the 1 million Qwen is also an MOE, and they were also doing some sparse attention tricks. It's also in their report as well. This does look similar to that.
Qwen Pro over the API that they didn't release.
There's Qwen Pro, and then there's Turbo. Turbo is the 1 million.
Is the 1 million?
Pro, I think, is just regular 128K. I'm going to make a prediction and to say Qwen might extend the 1 million to 4, because they can do that pretty easily.
Just to recap, now Google is providing 2 million via Gemini, and now we have 2 Chinese providers providing 1 million context window for Qwen Turbo, and now we have Hailuo Minimax 01 providing 1 million tokens for very affordable prices. One thing that I noticed is that our friends at Qwen released a web interface with all the Qwen models, so we can compare now. These folks now have a web interface that you can test things, and they have a web grounding. One thing that surprised me, folks, I don't know if you went to check this or not, but one thing that completely surprised me was the Minimax browsing beating ChatGPT and Perplexity at the question yesterday. That was mind-blowing to me. So if you're following some latest news and you want to read something, Perplexity wasn't able to answer the latest news for me. Neither was ChatGPT. Grok answered this immediately, and as expected from Grok, because it taps into Reddit. I don't know if has it a deal with Reddit or they're scraping it illegally, but it works. It also reads from X. This is one of the benefits. But also, Minimax answered that question. I was very surprised. So yes, we are now talking about the model that was released in open source. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The chat interface for this model, and that chat interface is grounded in search. There's a button there. If you go to minimaxi.com, I believe, minimaxi.com.
It's pretty
Good, right?
Yeah, the articles are pretty spot on. Usually only like 1 or 2 years or like the very recent.
So to Minimaxi Hailuo.ai chat.
Yeah,
and there's
exactly.
a checkbox there that says search the web, and you ask it, I don't know.
What are the latest? Let's see if it knows of Zenova's Kokoro release, because that was.
Is there a way to run Kokoro in the
JS.
browser?
This
So it does a
interesting.
grounding search, and I think it does it better than Perplexity. Running directly with the browser is not straightforward. No, it doesn't know it yet.
I want to give note that DeepSeek
Grok
search,
probably knows this.
when I used the DeepSeek search, it had a lot of sites, which are all in Chinese. When I was clicking the sources, I couldn't log into the site, but
Yes.
DeepSeek had access to it. DeepSeek also has a pretty good grounding. It might not be as great at the latest news, but it's pretty good.
Anything else that we have to talk about? Minimax? Yes. This one. Not only the Wolfram. Sorry, I interrupted you.
We can talk about the license at the end.
Yeah. So in addition to the model itself, they also released a multimodal version called Minimax VL01, which is exactly this model with a vision transformer on top of it, a 300 million vision transformer on top of it. So if you want this exact model that also sees, they have that, and they have top level performance across vision tasks as well. They get very, very good doc VQA. They get very good chart QA as well. They come close to or beat Claude 3.5 Sonnet and GPT-4o. They get a little bit lower on the MMMU Pro, but get very competitive scores as well to like foundational labs. Hard to run open-weighted model though. It's a very big one. They trained it on 512 billion vision language tokens on like 690 million image caption pairs. A lot of data with dynamic resolution features, so you don't have to provide very specific images. On its own, that's a great model, but also the vision model they released has quite a few advances. It beats Qwen VL72. Obviously, this size is 4 times the size, I think. So we would expect a model 4 times the size to beat Qwen VL, but still, it's quite up there with all the releases. I'm very impressed. Yeah, let's talk about the license.
The license is not an open source license, so you can use it if you don't have more than 100 million monthly active users. You need a separate license. They can revoke it at any time. You can't use it to train other models. The license isn't directly linked, but it's in the Hugging Face repository where the model weights are. Check the license for the exact terms. Always do that, of course. Yeah, so it's not fully open source like an Apache license, but it allows commercial use, certain restrictions, better than some research-only licenses. So it's not a negative, not the perfect positive, but still good. One thing I wanted to add is while it is pretty cheap, when you use the official API, the minimum you have to put in as credits is $25. So that you can just pay per use, so you have to put some money in.
You can apply for the developer advocate thing, I saw, and they can give you some credits as well. Minimax looks like a great model. Overall, great release in open weights, and they look like they want to reach out to the developer community. Hopefully, we'll talk to them at one of those. Nista, any final thoughts on how they're achieving some of the stuff or some very interesting things before we move on?
But I think at 47B active parameters, this will still be able to run on CPU. Under, I think, 256 gigs would be like the bare minimum, but you need around 300 gigs of RAM or VRAM. So it should be able to run okay on CPU.
NVIDIA project, I forgot the name already.
No, but if you have 256 gigs of RAM and NVIDIA 4090, you could actually put the context of the model on the card, and it would help quite a bit to do the splitting. So it is almost achievable for home use for not that much money, because 256 gigs of RAM is purchasable. It's expensive, but not that expensive. So you can just buy 32 gig or 64 gig RAM sticks for relatively cheap. I think they're like $70. For like $500 of RAM, you could actually run this on a CPU. It does make it a bit easier than DeepSeek V2. For the record, I was able to get higher speeds on an Amazon CPU last week people were able to get on 8 H200s on NVIDIA.
For DeepSeek?
Yeah, for deep, because again, there's very few active parameters as long as you treat the whole model like a monolith, and it's all in one CPU RAM, you can get pretty good speeds. But this overall will run slower DeepSeek V3, even though it is a smaller model, because you have more active parameters. We're trying it out. It's good. You can run on your own.
Yeah.
You can have full control. So
in the context is
massive contribution on their part.
Yeah, and report as well. Overall,
the longest context. So it's like having a 1 million context DeepSeek now. That's nuts.
Do you guys remember a few short years ago, we got excited from 4K to 8K context jumps? We're like, yes, 8K context, we can paste twice the size. And now 1 million, we're like, oh yeah, we already had 1 million. Yeah.
Do hospital use for GPT 3.5. We had to limit it to 2K and figure out how to do chunking with 2K and do mini summaries and stuff.
The old people who remember that Mario used to turn the bushes into clouds to save memory. We remember this, and the kids are like, what? 7,000 billion context window, we don't even care. We're going to be like, yeah, we remember the context window mattered, and they're going to be like, we're just going to abuse. The worst thing that I heard is that somebody told me, and I also do this now, that in Cursor, you can ask Cursor, the LLM, to format code for you. I know you can use the IDE to format code, but you can select the thing and you can ask the IDE like, hey, take this chunk of code and just reformat it. Don't fix bugs, don't create new code, don't do anything. Just send it for formatting, which for some people is like the most burn the planet abuse of LLM intelligence possible. But it works because editing algorithm is not super fast. It feels so abusive to use this level of intelligence for formatting, but yeah, people do this. Right, moving on.
On that note, there is some news on that note, because people were complaining, or someone at Anthropic was complaining, that a large part of Anthropic's use is from Cursor, and that this is why they're hitting rate limits and cannot keep up. I'm going to find the source because it looked pretty credible that is struggling to keep up with the use from Cursor as an IDE, because it just uses Sonnet by default. Also note, Cursor has their own model. I'm not sure. I tried to look if it's integrated, but I couldn't see the weights inside it. But they have their own model for doing Git merges. I don't know if the reformatter is Cursor's own model or if it is just sending it to Sonnet.
You choose whatever model you want in the command K. It's not like a specific feature or reformer. You ask the model to do stuff for you. The stuff that you ask is reformatting. All right.
Okay.
Nistan, let's choose one of those as the next thing to talk about. I think Sky T1 is interesting. And then also OpenBNB is very interesting. We're going to showcase OpenBNB. It's going to be very interesting because we're getting a conversational model on your phone. But I want to talk about Sky T1. It's a reasoning model. It's a 32 billion parameter. Nova Sky released a new reasoning model using the data generation from Quill. They released Sky T1, 32 billion parameter reasoning model. They trained for less than $450, not the thousands or millions, just $450. Demonstrating that it's possible to replicate high-level reasoning capabilities affordably and efficiently. They released all code in open source. You can go and see the Sky Thought GitHub open source. They did rejection sampling from Quill, and then they generated data from that.
They reformatted it with 4.0 mini. That's because 4.0 mini is a very good formatter. I've used that in datasets itself, and it's cheap enough, affordable to do. So super smart of them to do it that way. You get a high scoring model that sometimes can ramble a lot. You know how it can go on forever. They got a model that's not necessarily the best answers are, but always formats stuff perfectly and good at multilingual. If Quill outputted stuff in Chinese with Git, then 4.0 mini make it a very nice data set. And that's actually the most efficient way to use all the tools at your disposal. And yeah, also, this is a team from Berkeley. I don't know if they're related to the team that released the Starling data set, which is like an insanely good data set I use it in mobile data. So yeah, I'm not that surprised that such a team would be able to pull this off. But take the 450 with a grain of salt, because yes, it is true. But also, you have a pretty amazing team, which is likely to be extremely expensive in terms of work hours. later on.
How much they literally talk about estimating Lambda cloud pricing. So they talk about the model was trained for 3 epochs, learning rate 1E-5 and batch size of 96. Model training finishes 19 hours on 8 H100 with deep speed 0.3, and according to Llama cloud pricing. We can click the 1B log here that they shared, which is incredible, and we can see the last
slow learning rate.
You can see the loss rate here. You can see all the 1B logs, which is incredible. Shout out 1B. Woohoo.
The fact that they did this not on the Quill model, not on the reasoning model, but they used the regular Quencoder 32B, which is an excellent model, by the way. I think that is still my most used daily model out of all of them. So they added this reasoning to an existing very good model. Also, I was ranked 6th global with the Frankenstein, and that was built off of the same.
So this is a fine tune of the model?
This is a fine tune on the regular Quen 32B instruct. The Frankenstein that I made also used the same ones, and that got highly ranked. Some people were really doubting how high the benchmarks went on this, but I'm not that surprised. They picked an excellent base, and the data set makes sense, and it's from the same team that made Starling. But yeah, this is legit.
They took an excellent base model that's not a reasoner, used another reasoner model, created samples for reasoning, cleaned them up with GPT 4.0, right? With just a little bit of fine-tuning, made the reasoner very good on benchmarks. They jumped from 76 in the base to in Math 500. They jumped from 16 in AI Me 2024.
Yeah, Math Olympia, that's a huge jump.
Like from 16 preview is at 40. So they beat 01 preview, and then Quen Quill is at 50. 03 is like 97 or whatever. 03 just basically beat this AI Me. It's crazy. But yeah, they took the 16. A regular non-thinker, non-reasoner cannot do competition math. We know the reasoners can now solve this because they have the chain of thought built in. This is now at 43% of competition math. Significant jump also on live code bench hard from 9.8 to 17. Impressive numbers. They also talked about open sourcing everything. Data, code, unlike Quen Quill, Journey, and still to the reasoner, they open source the data, code, report, including technical details and model weights. So if you're interested in the process, everything is outlined here. We're going to add this in the show notes. Everything's outlined in their Nova Sky blog. So shout out to Nova Sky for this massive effort. And also, when you release a 1B log, I'm going to shout you out on ThursdAI because go 1B, right? We know you're training with weights and biases. Release those logs. It's going to help the transparency. We can look at your last curves. Look at how beautiful your last curves were. Just, look at how beautiful this is. 500 epochs. Very nice. Right, folks, we're moving forward because we need to talk about a bunch of other stuff. And the stuff that I want to talk about is OpenBeam. So, okay, just briefly mentioning multiple things. Gina Reader, lovely model. We love Gina. Gina Reader turns your HTMLs into markdowns and JSON files, structured JSON files. So you can extract any type of information from an HTML into a JSON. You can do so with Gemini, etc. This you can do completely off the books in your browser even. If we tap Zenova can turn this into a Gina Reader JS super quick. Gina Reader is an incredible model, significantly better than the previous one, Gina Reader V2. Outperforms models like Quen 2.5 32B and Gemini 2 Flash Experimental on those tasks. But it's a tiny model, and also directly converts it to JSON. They talked about converting a huge table of their legal stuff. Zenova said, of course we can do it. Expect this to happen at some point soon. We'll shout out Zenova later in the show because Kokoro.js is incredible. This is Gina Reader for you. A Reader V2 version of their model is just wonderful. Shout out to folks at Gina.
Also, they have one of the best RAG APIs in the industry as well. And I'm going to be releasing a tool based on that model later on today. So stay tuned for that. You just make a RAG out of any folder. So it'll be an open source tool. Gina makes some really nice tools. I think they're based out of Berlin.
German as well. So maybe worth getting them into your Cologne. Okay. All right. Then this thing is what I actually wanted to highlight, and maybe we can show how it works. Although I'm not sure with the sound and everything set up. OpenBMB released Mini CPM Omni, Mini CPM-O. We've talked about Mini CPM multiple times here. It's like an agent thing that does like a bunch of stuff. Mini CPM-O is a multimodal model now. It's a 3.8. I want to see the size of the. I don't know if I saved the size. Let me go and check the logs. Check the Captain logs. Mini CPM. Mini. Let me go and open this up. Mini CPM Omni web demo. It's an 8 billion parameter Omni model. Hopefully the chat will load. It didn't load for me yesterday. You can join it here with a video call. Do you remember how excited we were when ChatGPT showed us a demo of ChatGPT seeing stuff? Some may remember when Google showed a real-time understanding that Gemini sees like a duck. The person draws and asks, what is this? And it identifies it as a duck. We got excited. But Google lied. It wasn't an actual thing. And we were like, oh my God, the Google lied to us. That was a year ago. A year ago, Google, with all its might, the huge company, showed a demo that was fake. What we're just about to show you, an 8 billion parameter model that you can download does. It's absolutely insane, the speed with which we're moving. I can actually do a demo for you. I don't think that you will be able to hear. Should I do it somehow in a way where you'd be able to hear?
Maybe if we could hear the speech separately.
Yeah, let me see. I can just read out. I'll tell you. Basically, they have a real-time video call interface. Here we go. It kind of looks at me, and I can show it something like this can right here, and I can ask it, hey, what is the name of this drink? I don't know who of course, the law of demos, it started answering in Chinese, but it worked for me before in English. Yeah.
It suddenly started speaking other languages.
Suddenly it started speaking in Chinese. But you have a web interface for real-time video and voice calls. The cool thing about this specific model is that it understands sounds itself and not only speech. It doesn't turn your speech into TTS. Like that's what we learned from OpenAI TTS. The output is also weird. Wolfram, maybe can you share that?
Okay, we can try.
Let me send you the link.
I already have it open.
Remove.
Present.
Let's have a demo with real-time video call and then show it. Let's see if folks can appreciate the real-timeness of this.
I hope it's working.
Yeah. Let's do a video call.
What do you want?
Let's do a video call. This is like the thing that we get excited about.
Let's turn on the interruption so we can interrupt it.
Yes.
And let's see. Okay, have to confirm the permissions. We will see. It looks good. It works. Not the nice background I'm used to, but okay. The basement layer.
That's all right.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I had that before. I will just restart it and try to speak more English. Hello, let's talk in English. Say hello to me. Let us talk English and say hello.
Keep in mind
Let's talk English. Wait, let's try one more time. I will
maybe without the video, because the video would put a lot of load on it.
Yeah, but we can test it. Hello, can you hear me? Speak English and say hello. What am I holding? What am I doing? Now it's sent.
All right. So, folks, for some reason, the gods of live demos are not with us. But yesterday, I tried it out, and it read out. I'll flash this here because you don't want to see this, right? This is a check that I got from my insurance company. It read out all the numbers on the check, including my name. And because it's an Omni model, it read it out in multiple voices. It started with one voice, and then it read it out in a Chinese lady voice, but in English with different intonations. The voice it generates is generating not like a TTS. It generates different voices as well. It's crazy that it's an 8 billion parameter model that you can stream video into, and it actually works.
It worked
It works
much
for you
better
as well,
than
right?
this, yeah. And I was holding this gamepad like this, and it was saying, yeah, it's a gamepad.
Look. Somebody
That's
tells us
just-
on X as a comment, the Chinese was saying you were holding some sort of electronic device.
Okay, at least the recognition is great. What I did not make happen was the talk like a pirate or sing for me.
So not fully omni like we're used to, but also, hey, OpenAI's advanced voice mode does also not tell you to sing. Yes, we have to jailbreak this. So what else does the mini CPM do? They have some impressive numbers on there. The streaming bench, I didn't know there's an eval for streaming. They claim that they beat Gemini on streaming bench. Some people on Reddit are like, I'm not quite sure. They also claim in some of their numbers that they outperform GPT-4 in real-time audio understanding tasks. I didn't get that. I tried to talk to it very clearly, and I have my accent and everything, but come on. They're not outperforming GPT-4 in understanding. I've had multiple conversations with advanced voice mode, so I will take their claims with a grain of salt, even on evals. But the fact that we have an 8 billion parameter model that you can run on your Mac, that you can stream video to, and it understands the stuff that happens in the video, I think it's mind-blowing. Even though the demo didn't quite work, I didn't get the same evals performance that they're showing, but the fact that this is a tiny model that does this is quite impressive.
And it may be in Chinese or Singaporean.
Oh, but for document reading, the past mini CPM is a very used model. This is a well-known tool. So
they're getting state-of-the-art DocQA performance as well.
These benchmarks are likely to be accurate. There's always problems with benchmarks, but this is not some new company making random claims. They perform very well.
What's new here is the continuous video input. I really wanted to connect it to my Meta events and have it see what I see all the time. I think I found a way to do it. The only way to do it with Meta Ravens is you go live on Facebook or Instagram and then feed that into the model. This is the only way to do it. So that's what I want to do. We'll see if that's going to be possible. Omni-model live streaming mechanism for mini CPM. This is the new thing. And then leading visual capability. That's what they say. They claim that they surpassed GPT-4o with a tiny model in image understanding. And
remember that.
Go ahead.
So the voice model is only it's a 200M, it's a chat TTS. So I suspect they can probably just swap that out for Kokoro. The input model is just whisper medium. It's regular whisper medium. And then
wait, so it's not Omni entirely?
It is Omni with projection layers. But all Omni models are with projection layers. Only the DeepSeek experimental one was actual Omni. It's built with Siglip for 400M, Whisper Medium, and Chat TTS, and they're very well integrated with the 7B model, which I think they said was Coinbase or their own. It's pretty dope. Should use it. I think people already use this for vast document scanning.
Building your own chatbot that's video integrated has never been simpler and closer to your home. And onboard robotics like vision is very close. I think that's mostly it in the open source LLM part. InternLM we can mention as an honorable mention for InternLM. The only thing in intern that I wanted to mention is that they're getting very close to state of the art with significantly less training data. InternLM released an 8 billion instruct model with Apache 2 license, which is always to be celebrated. State-of-the-art performance on reasoning and knowledge that beats Qwen 2.57b. They trained it on 4 trillion tokens compared to Qwen 2. 57B, which was almost 20 trillion or like 18 trillion. With only 4 trillion tokens, they're getting very close to that level and achieving competitive results with just 75% of the training costs. We're seeing either same level performance of LLMs, significantly better, or same level performance with significantly less training costs or data. So Apache 2 license is great. I tried it and it was okay. On the benchmarks, the internal M was kind of okay. Not competing with even the mini part on benchmarks. Besides the fact that it's Apache 2 license, I haven't seen anything super interesting. The notable aspect here is their attempt to train this model very cheap.
I posted a graph with my updated benchmarks where I have the Sky T1, Minimax, and the internal M on it. The internal M, of course, for the size, it's on the right side where the verse models are, but many models of that size don't even show up in the graph because I have the 50% cutoff. So for the small models, they are progressing as well.
Right. So last thing that I'll honorably mention in our open source LLMs, and as I said, there's a lot to talk about. Drea Agent Alpha is a 3 billion model. It's interesting and unique because of this one thing. It's a Qwen fine-tune. By the way, do you guys notice how Qwen just absolutely replaced Mistral in the base for all the fine-tunes? Mistral is not even remotely here. It's all Qwen. Shout out to Junyang and Binyua and all of the friends from Qwen. Qwen is now the absolute source of everything, including some stuff from, I think Meta released some Qwen fine-tunes. Huge shout out to Qwen team for this incredible achievement that upheaved the open source industry. Putting this aside, Drea Agent Alpha is a Qwen fine-tune, 3 billion, 7 billion parameters on this new framework for agents specifically, that instead of telling this model to do tool use or agent or tool use via JSON instructions. So as developers, usually when you tell an LLM, hey, I have these tools for you to use. I want you to tell me which tools you want to use. So, for example, if you have an agent that needs to send an email or translate something or go search the web, you tell it by saying, hey, I wrote this function in my code base. This function gets these parameters. The outputs are this. And you provide the LLM this information via JSON instructions, gives you back JSON instructions. These folks fine-tune this, and instead of giving the JSON instructions and parameters, they do it with Python function calling. What they say this allows the model to do is combine multiple functions one after another to chain those functions. So, for example, if you have one function that calls another function that calls another function, this allows the model to know what the output of one function could then send to another function and significantly improve the function calling metrics. Not significantly, so it's very interesting, a different approach, but improves enough on the Qwen base in function calling and getting close to GPT-4o function calling in multiple function calling benchmarks. So interesting approach. I haven't seen novel approaches like this, so I wanted to shout this out. For folks who are building agents, this could be interesting in Python. That's it. Anything else, Nista, want to hear from you if tool use novelty is interesting at all?
No, but there's a call out from the CEO of Ansloth to make more tool use and function calling fine-tunes of Qwen, especially because the Qwen coders were not really trained for function calling, so it's a little tricky to make them do that. They can still do that, but yeah, if someone can please make Qwen 32b instruct the coder fine-tune for function calling, please do. Otherwise, so I don't have to make it myself. This would work. I don't just, again, shout out to the Qwen team. We were using them even before it was cool. Like, we knew since Qwen 1 that they were horse models and very easy
100%
to train. That's the thing that kept them going forward. They didn't just overpower these and make them into complete solutions. Is because there was so much back and forth from the community, they ended up making an architecture that is easy to train. That also benefited them in the long. If you compare Gemma at first was not easy to train. It was a little bit difficult and so on. I'm not surprised. It took a lot of work to get to that point. That's not just out of nowhere.
Super quick. I want to ask both of you. Well, I also have to, Nisa, I want to update about GitHub GG. I think that folks who follow us maybe heard what you guys are cooking over there, and maybe give us like 2 minutes of what's the latest. You mentioned in the beginning of the episode that you have some folks talking to you. Can you give us a little bit of an update, like what's going on?
Yeah, so we're struggling to keep the site up right now because
can you give us a 2 minutes explanation of what GitHub GG is and what's going on?
People want to use any GitHub with an LLM. So all we did is change the github.com link. You just change the .com to .gg anywhere you are, and you get a nice long summary of that. So that project kind of blew up, and now we're seeing so much traffic that it barely holds together. But github.com crashed too, so you can give us an excuse for now until we get our DevOps down. So yeah, we got approached for the data set. And we also have Gemini Flash integrated. Our own model, the DevOps could not keep up with the demand because we see up to 1,500 users an hour now. So we can't afford to host our own model at the moment. We have some big bank in Europe that wants us to make something for them related to to this. They want something to help out with the COBOL transitions. It looks like we're not going to need any VC investment because, as they say, life gives to the giver. If you make something cool and people use it, then contracts just come to you taking then. So yeah, that worked out for us so far. We have a very interesting new chat interface coming up, which is very different. I was also looking at integrating OpenHands into it, but again, it's just a DevOps issue. We'll have enough compute to actually support entire environments for people to securely run GitHub repos and just mess around with that. Right now, you can prompt it for Gemini, but just take any github.com link and change it to .gg. And especially if you have documents, like if you go to the docs site of a GitHub and you just change that link to .gg, now you get all your docs in just one copy paste. That's a very nice way to use it. So again, this was a troll project that we just launched. And even Cloudflare's workers could not keep up. So we had to go from serverless to DevOps-less. So we just had one big server handle it up until now. And now that's also running out. So we need to go back to distributed. I've been pretty busy with that. And also there's another open source project with one doctor that approached me on Clubhouse. And that'll be completely open. It's not a product for sale or anything, just to do transcriptions on your phone for medical conversations. We'll be releasing that as well. I've been busy. Those are the updates on my end. You guys all follow me on Twitter. Someone recognized the voice at the Intel meetup with Ryan. He's like, I recognize your voice from ThursdAI. See you guys around, I guess.
Yeah, so when you come to, if you're able to get a spot in the Toronto Tinkerers AI, which, as far as I heard,
I got it. I'm just waiting for...
Not you. I'm talking to our listeners. Yeah. If any of our listeners got a spot in the Toronto Tinkerers, I will tell you that I know Joe, the organizer from Tinkerers Global, 682 registered to the next Tinkerers in Toronto as of 1 hour ago. That's a lot of people. Probably waitlisted to oblivion. Nistan is going to do a demo there.
Approved for the demo, but I guess they're taking their time.
I see.
But at least I got the...
You got the spot, but not the demo. Okay, cool.
Not the
but Nistan, so if you want a demo, come up. It's funny you should mention OpenHands, because we have the person in charge of OpenHands. Welcome, Graham, from All Hands AI, focusing on OpenHands. Graham, you're welcome to also join the Twitter space on a different tab and mute it so folks can follow you there as well. And meanwhile, I will say that this is your second time on the show. And when you came here, the project was called OpenDevin. I will remind you that ThursdAI is a weekly show that's sponsored by Weights and Biases. And so now we're sliding into the corner that I like to call this week's buzz. And we'll start there. And then we're going to have a chat about OpenHands and All Hands. Let's do this week's buzz. Alrighty, so welcome to this week's buzz, a category on ThursdAI that I mentioned everything that is new and exciting about from Weights and Biases this week. So again, as a reminder for folks who just joined, my name is Alex Volkov. My day job is an AI evangelist with Weights and Biases. This day job is also a weekend job. This weekend, we were in San Francisco hosting an evals sprint in our San Francisco office. Many CTOs and founders of companies came to build evals at our offices at Weights and Biases. It was great. So thank you to everybody who came out. We also did 2 workshops in Seattle. So thanks to the community who listened to the show and came out. Additionally, we released a course this week. I will let you guess what this course is about. Yes, of course, this course is about evals. One of the guest instructors for this course is here with us. I want to say hi to Graham. Graham, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, would love is for you to introduce yourself, even though this is your second time here on the show. You've been here before, but back then we didn't do videos. This is a new format for me, for folks who are just listening in. Would you mind introducing yourself briefly and how people may know you?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Graham Neubig. I'm a professor at Carnegie Mellon University and also the chief scientist at All Hands. At All Hands, we're making OpenHands, which is an AI coding agent that you can use to build software.
That's super awesome. All Hands has been growing in popularity, and OpenHands has contributed to this popularity. I've seen this all over my timeline. It used to be called OpenDevin. Last time we talked, I remember it started with a tweet. I think Jun Yang introduced us back then. Jun Yang is a co-host of the show. We talk about how important the Quen open source models are to the community. Now I want to focus on contributions to the course we just released. We had a course about EVAs. It's going very strong. We're getting a lot of feedback about your part specifically because agent and evaluating agents is very important. Would love to hear from you maybe one or two highlights of what you added to the course and what you talked about. I heard some great feedback. Would love for you to give a glimpse, a taste of what is waiting for them if they take the course.
So in the course, I did a couple things. The first thing was I talked about our lessons in evaluating agents. This is really tricky. In OpenHands, we have a harness to evaluate 16 different data sets, that coding, web browsing to kind of like general assistance. And we needed to take each data set that was, on Hugging Face, it had to standardize it into a format that could be used with our agents. This is in contrast to language models where people have already done this work. There's things like the language model evaluation harness where it's already kind of been standardized, but agents are in a more nascent state, so that's tricky. Another issue is evaluating agents is very expensive because you use a lot of tokens over and over again. And so that basically makes it, you need to be a little bit more careful and strategic about the evaluations you run. I talk a little bit about that, including how we evaluate on smaller data sets and then scale up to bigger data sets. Another part that I did there was I did a demo where we asked our coding agent to run an evaluation and then log it to Weights and Biases' new product, Weave. It kind of worked. It was fun to see the agent run the experiment itself and compare the results of Claude and GPT on being a language model as a judge. So those were two parts that I contributed there.
Weave is the product that I work hard to promote, so I appreciate the fact that you mentioned this. Definitely the folks that come to the evals course can enjoy seeing how quickly and easily. Thank you for shouting this out. And thank you for joining our course and as a guest host. Another guest host we have here is Paige Bailey from Google. She shows how to do things with Imagen and VO and evaluate those. And definitely very interesting all around on evaluations, agents, and different multimodal stuff. This is coming from Weights and Biases. We have an upcoming evals workshop together with Pinecone. So if you're in New York next week, January 22nd, and you want to evaluate your RAG applications or your agentic RAG, this is an important new thing. If you want to evaluate your agentic RAG, definitely tune in. I will add this to the show notes. We're coming up on our January 22nd event with Pinecone and Weights and Biases. This is most of what we have for this week's buzz. We had upcoming breaking news for Weights and Biases, maybe today, but not quite yet. In addition to all of the stuff that we're doing, our CTO and co-founder, Sean, who's in charge of building Weave, is also working on his own side project. So our co-founders are all working on side projects. Our co-founder is working on his own agent framework. I don't know if it's a framework necessarily or it's an agent. And he's trying to beat Weave Verified. And he's very close. So I would watch his space. We may have breaking news during the rest of the show. We'll definitely bring him up once he has this. But I would watch the space. This has been this week's buzz. And now we're moving on because I want to chat with Graham about OpenHands. I've seen this in multiple places now, and it's been a while since we talked. The project evolved from a community thing on GitHub a lot, and I would love to hear about how the evolution happened. We've talked a while ago, and recently it's been a thing of mine to bring people who we talked to a while ago after almost a year to see how they've been and what changed since then. So Graham, tell us about how the change from OpenDevin to OpenHands happened. Tell us about All Hands as a company. I would love to hear some progress and evolution in this area, and also what's new and what can people expect when they first start OpenHands.
Yeah, so there's several things there. The first thing is, why did we switch from OpenDevin to OpenHands? The project evolved as an open source project that we started right after Devin came out. I think a lot of people were inspired by the idea of a coding agent for various reasons. I was inspired because I'd been working on coding agents for a while, but the kind of packaging that they had was really nice. Other people had been inspired because they didn't know coding agents could do those sorts of things. But since then, we've evolved beyond what Devin is doing. We do some things very different from what they're doing. People were saying, oh, you're a Devin clone, right? And we wanted to move away from that because we're not anymore. People working on the project got really excited about it and wanted to basically make it their full-time job. So Robert and Xingyao and I kind of founded a company around it. And now we have about 10 people working on the project. This includes all sorts of things, both agent quality, making sure that the agent is good, cost effectiveness, making sure that we can run it for a reasonable amount of money, not break the bank for the people who are working on it, maintaining the community, computer or their phone. So I really enjoy interacting with it on my phone. In terms of what it can do, I wrote a blog post released yesterday on 8 things you can do with coding agents, including prompts that people can look up. This is on the All Hands AI blog, if people are interested. It includes implementing features and squashing bugs, fixing merge conflicts, fixing failing tests on GitHub, spinning up infrastructure to host your website, or doing data science tasks. And so I'm actually pretty excited and amazed by the big variety of things that a good coding agent can do, because code is powerful and it allows you to do a lot of things. So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
That's awesome. First of all, it's great to see how many community starts, like at ThursdAI, started as open source contributions, started rolling into companies more and more. Like Moondream is one, Open Interpreter is one. It's incredible to see how this keeps happening and how early we do those conversations. We keep bringing you guys back, and it's a company and folks are working on this. It's incredible. Tell us the main challenges that your agents are running into right now and what remains to be seen. I've talked with Joao from Crew AI, which you probably heard about, and I wonder, because folks are talking about 2020 being the year of AI agents. Everybody's trying to bring agents to enterprises. What are some of the main challenges that you are trying to solve while the LLM keeps improving, intelligence keeps improving, in reasoning? What are still some of the main challenges you're like, okay, we're still not there?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of challenges. Number one, it's really amazing how much better agents have gotten over the past 6 months or something. When we first started out the project, I could not trust an agent to just go in and autonomously solve my problems. OpenHands is the biggest contributor to OpenHands. We're using it all the time to solve our own problems. That being said, there are still issues. One very interesting thing is generating code is no longer the issue. It's more making sure that the right code gets generated and the agent gets the right directions. We are by now pretty adept prompters of agents. We can tell agents what to do and know the right language to talk to them, the level of specification they need. But I think most people don't know this. So how can we get a library of prompts that people can use that allow them to effectively prompt agents to do particular tasks is one thing. Another thing is exploring large repositories is still tricky. I think Swebench scores are very much underestimating the difficulty of this, because Swebench is all based on open source projects that all the language models have seen already. So they kind of already know the directory structure of these projects. When you put it on a code base that isn't in the language model training data, it becomes a bit harder to find the files that you need to be modifying. A final issue is agents still get in a bad state and can't escape from it. They start doing something they shouldn't be doing, and then they try really hard to finish doing that thing when that's actually not what they should be doing. And so being able to go back and revisit your underlying assumptions is not something that language models are very good at right now. I think that might improve as language models get smarter, but I think we might also need a little bit of scaffolding to tell the agent you're on the wrong track. So those are the agent quality issues. Separately from that, there's a lot of UI UX issues that need to be solved. How can we get humans to interact with agents in the most
Yeah. One thing that struck me from the conversation is where I consider that 2025 is the year of agents and reasoning, test time compute. That's the biggest explosion I saw from the end of 2024. He wasn't as excited as I was. He's building a platform for agents, etc. What's your take on reasoning and agents together? Have you guys played with reasoning models like Quill and the other ones? What's your take on agents and reasoning together? And is it improving agents? Is it like competing with agents to some extent? I heard some takes while he wasn't very exciting. I heard some, commenters, they left a comment. People was like, he's not very excited because agents are a threat to like his whatever bottom line, whatever. Would love to hear from you, like what reasoning means for agents, reasoning models specifically, and the fast rise in test time compute scaling laws.
Yeah. One interesting thing is our base language model is Claude, which is a very good model. We also use DeepSeek because it's an open source model, and we're an open source company and we want to support open source, and it's also quite good. Also, we want Qwen to work, so we trained a Qwen model using agent trajectories, and it works reasonably well. We've also tried O1, and we had less success with O1. The accuracy is in the 30 to 40% range, whereas Claude in our kind of like 2-month-old harness is in the 54% range. And I think the reason why is because if you look at all of OpenAI's announcements about O1, none of them talk about agents. They're all talking about reasoning. And I feel like you have the reasoning here, and then orthogonal to that, you have the good training as an agent, and O1 has only done one of those. I figure that OpenAI is also working on agents, and probably the next model they release is going to be trained both as an agent and with reasoning. And I think if we get to that point, O1 will probably be a lot better. O1 or whatever that model is called will probably be a lot better at that. But it's also extremely expensive. If you use it as an agent, it will get to the point where using that is maybe more expensive than hiring a junior human programmer to solve your problems for you. I think the reasoning models need to do something about that expense in order to make it useful in that way, unless reasoning can reduce the number of steps that the agent needs to do by a lot, or make sure it stays on track way better, or things like that. So it'll be really interesting to see how it develops. I don't know exactly how it's going to develop.
Graham, maybe one last question. I know we have like tons of other things that we didn't quite yet cover, but one last question for you. Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan's show and talked about this year, and also I think Sam Altman mentioned this in his blog, agents, mid-tier agents will join the workforce this year and be able to code as well as mid-tier engineers. And now Zuckerberg also announced cuts and not hiring. You're building agents now, a software engineer agent essentially. Do you see this end of this year? Do you see agents workforce? You said that OpenHands built most of the contributions to OpenHands. Do you see that happening by the end of this year in that magnitude, or is it just big companies, but they're not building them day to day like you?
I think coding agents are going to be really important. If somebody is an engineer and is worried about this, I would encourage people to, as soon as possible, download and use an agent. If it's OpenHands, download OpenHands and play around with it and see what it can do. It's very good at generating code if you give it clear directions about what to do. But good software engineers are able to do things without getting really good directions about what to do. They're able to make good design decisions and things like this. From what I can see, models are still not all that great at doing this. Maybe they'll be great at doing this by the end of 2025, but at the moment they are not. For engineers working in this area, I would definitely suggest that they get familiar with agents, get good at using them. And different skills are necessary. One skill that becomes very necessary is confirming whether the code that the agent wrote is actually good code. And that's not something you practice quite as much as writing code, but I think that skill is going to become much more important over the course of 2025. If you can get ahead of the curve on that, I think you'd have a really big competitive advantage. I like programming, but I don't myself, because the agent does it for me, and then I go in and check its code. That might be looking at what the future of programming looks like.
Yep. The thing that worries me about this is that many folks think they don't need to study coding anymore because the agents will do everything. The thing you're mentioning is quite the opposite. You need to learn code because, yes, the agents will write code for you, but you'll need to confirm that whatever happened. You'll turn from a developer to a manager of multiple developers. They'll do multiple things for you. but you still have to make sure that some of the stuff they do is correct. Engineering manager that's worth their salt needs to know what the engineers do until such a time that they generate code that you have no idea what it's about. So that's very, very exciting. Folks, check out the documentation, and definitely I recommend to try OpenHands at docs.allhands.dev. Graham, thank you so much for coming up. Folks need to check it out and run some agents and see what it's all about. We expect great things from this. Thank you so much for coming. I was very excited to hear that this is now a company. I was very surprised to see the excitement about OpenHands, and then I saw it was renamed OpenDevin. I got it as a surprise, and I was very happy to see that this is the outcome of that effort. Folks definitely should check out the course where you show examples of this. I hope you guys a lot of success with the company, and feel free to come back and tell us about the upcoming releases. Thank you, Graham, for coming up. Thank you. Feel free to stick around or drop as well. Meanwhile, we are moving forward because we have big news that we haven't yet covered, which is GPT tasks, Mistral, Codestral, and Sakana AI. I will say, out of the three, I think Sakana AI, we don't have that much time, but let's briefly cover GPT tasks, I think. Finally, OpenAI released an update to how agentic ChatGPT is. I think that's the way we describe this. Wolfram, you want to take this one? Did you try task already, Wolfram?
I didn't try it yet. I saw that it's available, but I usually use just the 01 model, not the 4.0 anymore. So it's like setting a reminder. It will send you an email that puts you back a link on the ChatGPT interface. It gets you the response you asked for. Like, remind me that I have to buy some groceries after work. Hopefully it sends a reminder early enough.
So very interestingly, it's a ChatGPT reminder. You can tell it, do a thing for me and then send me a reminder. This could be a ChatGPT task. You can ask it, go browse the web for me and give me a thing. Or this could be like, generate a story for me and then send me at 9 a.m. Or anything web related, right? You can say, get me the weather in Berlin when I arrive there at this time. So these are tasks with intelligence. Now, it seems silly. You guys know that I'm the hype man for OpenAI. The 12 days of OpenAI, I was here hyping every time. Let me just zoom in on my face. Folks who are listening to me, this seems silly. Right now, there's not a lot of utility in how this is. I see testing catalog in our audience. I see a bunch of folks. I don't see a lot of use for this right now. But honestly, this doesn't seem like this is it. This seems like the first release to test the waters, and the first task that I got, the email that I got is like, whoops, this didn't work. And then they posted a tweet that says, whoops, we apologize, it didn't work for you guys. And then they tried again, they said, yeah, it works now. This feels agentic to a sense, because the whole thing is you schedule a task and then the agent goes, does something for you and comes back and tells you about it. The email is just a notification so that you won't miss it in the app. Many people don't have the app, so you don't have a notification. The email just announces, hey, your task was complete, go to ChatGPT and see it. The task could be generate something. I asked for a task for 9:30 in the morning today to generate a title for the show, because in my time, ThursdAI is 9:30 in the morning. I did not get a task. I also asked it to show me all my tasks. I also didn't get all my tasks. So we're still not AGI. You don't currently have all tasks.
Great building block if you have some integrations where you could say, okay,
Yes.
check my mails, check it for new mails at that moment, or check the new
100%.
podcast and give me information what was discussed.
How it feels. This is a building block for something agentic, and it feels like they're just laying the foundation for something much, much bigger.
But the question is, couldn't we just use a code interpreter and say, make a cron job for a specific time to run an LLM and send it this prompt? That would be basically the same thing, wouldn't it?
It's a sign for something bigger.
Wolfram, but the question is, the 300 million users that they have, how many of them can set a cron job with just natural language? Can we do this with voice? I think we can also do this with voice. You can say, remind me tomorrow about whatever, before my flight. Integration is going to be the important piece here.
With Siri shortcuts, when code interpreter was still code interpreter, to jump between apps and push stuff in, that was very hard to set up. Like I could barely get it working. So I think this is about to become a much bigger deal than it seems. It's kind of like when OpenAI announced functions and people were like, what is this? Is this even going to be any good and stuff? But I feel like this might be a pretty big deal, again, for the tasks that you guys mentioned.
It's a bit catching up, because Gemini has the stuff where you can say, remind me, and that's a reminder for you, just using the normal Google Calendar stuff like that. So
it's
you
a
can
task
already use
schedule. it's like the scheduler in the Linux kernel. Now they have the main component, then they have a tasks scheduler. That's a huge missing piece that you need to build out everything else, right? Yeah.
If the Karpathy, you remember Karpathy, like LLM OS metaphor that he talks about?
Yeah.
Like the scheduler part is what they just added, right?
It's just the birth of that.
Yeah. So bigger piece, but right now not super useful, but coming to be very useful.
It's a bit weird that you have to select it as a model of its own. So yeah, it should be a part.
Remember that the image generation was separate, voice was separate, all of these things were separate before they unified them. The code interpreter was separate before. All of these models were separate, and then they unified them. We were celebrating all of this as well. It looks like it trained a thing, and they're going to unify this eventually. Let's mention briefly Mistral, a new code stroll from Mistral, a new coding model that they claim is state-of-the-art, claiming that takes #1 at the LM Arena.
The fill in the middle
Copilot arena, yeah.
That benchmark is very good because that's mostly what you do inside an integrated development environment.
No, it's a third, but like it says #1, so like they tied for #1 with Claude 3.5 SOTA and DeepSeek. I also thought it's third, but the rank is #1.
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, the score is like very close.
The original code straw, a lot of people didn't realize that it was very good for that task.
Yeah.
Because we just looked at the overall benchmarks and we're not that good. But for the tasks which you're going to be using inside, like people that use Cursor, it's actually very good. I'm just a bit disappointed that they didn't just release this model so we could like integrate it into our apps and build with it. You had to apply for an API, which doesn't feel like it's the same company anymore.
This is what I wanted to hear. Let me announce the Code Stroll before. So Mistral released a new version of Code Stroll. 12 points over the previous Code Stroll that was still very good on the Copilot Arena benchmark. Copilot Arena benchmark on LM Arena is measuring any code model that helps you within Cursor or different Copilots, right? The previous Code Stroll was very good. This one is tied for #1. Those are fill-in middle or like actual coding agents that help you code. They don't compare themselves to Qwen, that people are not very happy with this, and then they don't release any weights. This is available via their API. You have to fill out a form, or via a coding agent, continue.dev. So not directly available via Cursor, available via continue.dev. The community did not love it. The community, please tell us.
It's just my opinion on this thing, and I don't really filter them. It's just, in my opinion, if they had released this as an open model, it would benefit them a lot more because we would actually be integrating it instead of spending time. I was able to do a yarn extension on fine-tune and Frankenstein that I had already made. I could extend that by a 6 multiplier to about 200,000 tokens, and that worked fine. I would much rather use the 250,000 tokens from CodeStrel because it would probably be smaller and more handy, but I couldn't integrate that into our daily use. So that's unfortunate. The polyglot benchmark, just to go really quickly on it, there were some questions on this benchmark. It's a newer Aider bench. Personally, I like the older Aider bench.
For folks who are listening, listen, what are you talking about? Aider is Aider that also like a framework for
it's another agent. So there are only really 2 good benchmarks now for code. Now we have Aider and SWE bench. As Graham mentioned, they have their drawbacks. And Aider bench just measures it like kind of agentic code sort of thing. So these are multi-step hard benchmarks. So they're very hard to fool or to cheat on. The model needs to be actually good. Even if you cheat, you're not going to be able to get much out of it. I like the older Aider bench, but I think this one is easier to run. And you can still compare it with the older Aider bench. I just suspect that even Qwen could do a lot better if it had function calling. It could go a lot higher than DeepSeek v3. And honestly, same for CodeStrel. If you had the weights, we could either train it for function calling and be able to bump up that benchmark for the CodeStrel model. Yeah, so right now, I don't know, people like myself view these as much more accurate benchmarks as to how good the model actually is and how much you can trust it with the work.
CodeStrel was released, and then Paul from Aider released the benchmark results from the new Polyglot benchmark from Aider, and CodeStrel, the new one, significantly underperformed compared to DeepSeek and Qwen 2.5, significantly compared to the results that they are tied essentially on the LM Arena. The difference between the 2 benchmarks is stark, and this is what the community is kind of like, what the hell? And we cannot independently verify this because we don't have weights. We only have the API for this model. We only can access this model via this continue.dev agent. However, I was able to run Cultural via OpenRouter in Cursor. It's possible. If you want to try this out, all you need is in Cursor, you have to set this up into OpenRouter, override the OpenAI base URL to OpenRouter, and add your OpenRouter key. Then you can add Mistral AI Cultural 2501 in your things, and then you can actually use this. So you can use Mistral Cultural 2501. It works, and it's fast as well. So it's possible. Testing it out is possible. I tested it out. It's fast. It looks good. Let's move on, folks. We're at 2 hours, but I don't want to skip before we talk with Hailuo text to audio because it's emotional. But before, we also mentioned Kokoro.js and out TTS. So all of these things together. So before we do this, I really want to open a window where I can share with you guys what I'm talking about. So let me do this.
Dude, Kokoro is the most revolutionary product of this year.
Tell us.
And we said it last week. You have a 0.01B. So in 8-bit, that's only going to be like 80 megs, 82 megabytes. You can run that on a single CPU core and have very good text to speech. The only thing it's missing is it doesn't have emotion allowed, and it can't really clone voices, but the voice quality just stock on default is so good that I was right. I had entire code reviews that were like 30, 40,000 tokens long, and I just had Kokoro make audio of them. I could fall asleep to listening to the code reviews.
So we talked about Kokoro last week, and we got very excited. However, a friend of ours who builds stuff for the web, Zenova, just built Kokoro.js, which you can now install and run in the browser. It only downloads like 300 megabytes in the browser. You can say something like, hey,
and keep in mind,
ThursdAI, welcome. This is the web version of Kokoro, and this is Sky from OpenAI, who they took away from us. Yeah, listen, go ahead.
Keep in mind, that's running it in Float 32, so that will work anywhere. That will work on any CPU. You don't even need to have a GPU on the browser.
Zenova just listens in and says it only downloads 90 megabytes. Okay, let's go. Let's test it out.
Oh, he's gotten it down to, yeah. See how fast the community moves? So I'm guessing Zenova already did the ONNX chain. Yes, there we go.
So let's listen, tune in and listen how this sounds.
Yeah.
Hey, listeners of ThursdAI, welcome. And this is the web version of Kokoro. And this is Sky from OpenAI, who they took away from us.
They took away Sky, and now it runs in my browser. Nobody can know. I can ask it to say anything I want, and it runs in my browser. And it's only 90 megabytes. It's nothing. Nothing. It's so quick. It's crazy.
So we're going to have Sky everywhere, like literally on any site. It's smaller than the build size of a lot of websites.
Haha, Scarlett Johansson Suux.
It's incredible.
Like Scarlett Johansson sues us.
Hopefully Scarlett Johansson doesn't sue, because I didn't come up with this model. We're just playing around. So, folks, this is number one. Kokoro.js is now possible. Zenova, shout out, huge shout out for this. It's only 90 megabytes, and now it's impossible to stop. Basically, once it's in there, it's impossible to stop. You can run this in anything. You can build your own agent that talks to you in JavaScript and runs things for you. That's incredible. That's number one in the TTS realm. Number two in TTS realm is out TTS. Out TTS is other TTS news that, let me see if I can find. It's a 500 million and 1 billion TTS model. Let me see if I can find from outai.com.
Is based on almost. Shout out to our friend Nathan there.
So Olmo from LLM. This model is based on them. I want to find the playground that I've played with.
They did a big job by actually sending code to Llama CDP, and now it is integrated in Llama CDP as well. This makes it easier for running it on your phone and stuff.
The cool thing about this specific thing is that this one generates text like, hey there, folks. Let's see if we can generate speech. It's going to take a second because many people are running this. But the cool thing about OutTTS is that the speech it generates is way less cool than Kokoro. It's significantly less good. But the voice cloning is built in. Kokoro doesn't do voice cloning. Kokoro is that good, but for that reason, the voice cloning is not there. This model generates voice, like it has one-shot voice cloning within 8 seconds.
Hey there, folks.
Okay. It generates some voice super quick. But if you upload a piece of something, it will voice clone that voice. Maybe a
For the
little bit longer.
multilingual, that is a big advantage for this
Yes.
compared to Kokoro.
Kokoro is only English, right? This one is English, Japanese, Korean, I
German
think
too.
German and French.
Kokoro had French as well. Actually, the French Kokoro voice is hilarious when reading technical stuff in English.
Oh, really?
Because you guys just have to try it out.
I think I have one more to show, and that's the Hailuo voice that's emotional. I really want to show this as well. So this is the last one. We're going to wait maybe one more second, because if I open it up in another tab, you guys won't be able to hear, but I think we should be able to give this one more minute. I'll open this in a new tab. Okay, so the last thing that I want to show is that the Hailuo Minimax folks, not only did they release the textual model, they also released a new version of audio generation.
Oh, I got some maybe.
We have breaking news?
Breaking news. Someone just sent me a screenshot that they got access to the O3 Mini, which is pretty.
People are getting early access, but I didn't.
Yeah, we're excited to offer you early access to O3 Mini during this early testing period. You know, there's some kind of
Mark somehow, yeah. Okay, for Hailuo, the example that I wanted to show, let me see if I can present this so you guys can also. Here's the UI for the voice. This voice is significantly more emotional as well. There are a bunch of voices that they have. You can also clone here. I don't want to clone my voice within this interface. It's also very clearly like 11 Labs API is available. One thing that I found is this one. I can play this to you guys and you can see which voice this sounds like.
As your queen, I command absolute loyalty and dedication from all my subjects. Let no one dare question my authority.
Is that? What do you guys think? Did you try to figure out who this voice is?
Some politician?
No, this is Emilia Clarke's voice from Game of Thrones, from Khaleesi.
Oh, okay. Now that fits to the title as well. Oh.
Yeah.
I command absolute loyalty and dedication from all my subjects.
Yes.
Let no one dare question my.
That's what I wanted to bring here.
But you know what? I watched the German synchronization, the German dubbing, but I have seen her on YouTube talk about it.
So I heard this and I was like, okay, this is a Chinese company. They care less about copyrights. But the emotional thing in this voice is crazy. I want to read out the thing super quick. I had the speech prepared for you guys. I want to generate this. And there's a voice modifier with emotions. Okay, so I think that this is better than 11 Labs to some extent. Let me show you again the Queen thing.
It is very good.
So here's Daenerys Stormborn speech in an angry emotion. So you can choose emotions as well. There's like sad, angry, fearful, disgusted. Let's do angry.
I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, the unburnt, mother of dragons, Khaleesi to Drogo's riders, and queen of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. You have seen the wonders I have made, the victories I have won, the justice I have delivered. You have seen me free slaves and feed the hungry, heal the sick, and protect the weak. But there is one enemy who remains, one enemy who will not yield. There, behind those walls, they mock us. They call us savages. They call us barbarians. They call us beasts. But we are not beasts. We are men and women. We are warriors, and we are free. And we will not be mocked. Today, we march on Meereen. We will not stop until the city is ours, until justice is served, until every man, woman, and child is free. We will not stop until the world knows that the Dragon Queen has come, and she will not be denied.
Right?
Oh, great.
That's great. So let's try this with a happy one. I want to hear this with happy.
I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, the unburnt, mother of dragons, Khaleesi to Drogo's riders, and queen of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. You have seen the wonders I have made, the victories I have won, the justice I have delivered. You have seen me free slaves and feed the hungry, heal the sick and protect the weak. But there is one enemy who remains, one enemy who will not yield.
Yeah, that was significantly different.
Real competition for 11 labs, huh?
Thank you, folks, for joining. Okay, so folks, we're gonna end on this, on angry. We're gonna end on this.
This was it for this week. Thank you, folks, for joining ThursdAI.
All right, this was it for this week, folks. Thank you for joining ThursdAI. Thank you, Wolfram. Thank you, Nistan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us from week to week. We're going to be here next week to talk about everything that happened in AI. I will remind you that this show is sponsored by Weights and Biases. If you're joining in the Twitter space, please follow Weights and Biases Weave, which is I appreciated everyone who I saw this week, because when I travel, I get to see the people from our community. Next week, Wolfram will get to see the people from our community in Germany. So if you're in Germany or near Cologne, feel free to join. We're going to add a link to that event in show notes as well. In 2 weeks, there's going to be the Toronto meetup. You can maybe meet Nistan if you get in as well. And then next week also the New York meetup. So we're going to be a lot of places at once, all over the world. That's great. The community grows. It's been a big week for open source. We've talked about just like an insane amount of open source releases. I feel like next week is going to be like a big week for big companies as well. It's been always my pleasure to host this. We'll see you guys next week. Meanwhile, I'm going to play us out. Bye-bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.